Hello, art stars. Welcome to another week, and I think as you can tell from my table and all the little scraps, it's collage week. I love collage for several reasons, and it allows you to do many things with texture and layering and 3D and color juxtaposition, so you can have a lot of fun with it. And also I love it because it's something that you can start maybe not with a clear vision or a plan in mind, but just kind of seeing where the materials take you and what you find in happenstance brings into your work. So I'm going to show you a bit of what I've got collected. Now, I tend to have trouble throwing away things. One, because I hate waste. And I think when, there's been so many resources used into creating something, it's a shame to just toss it. And two, because I love collecting stuff and it's a bit of a problem. So I tend to keep little offcuts of threads to introduce to my collages. As you can see, little bits of different cards. I've even got an old debit card that I really liked the color of. So I've kind of cut it up into little pieces. I've got a bit of leather in here. I've got some bits of labels that I've kept that are really thick card. And I'm going to show you what I do with those later on. I've got an old magazine, some newspapers. I tend to try and grab the pages that just have text on them because I really love printed text as a print for your drawing or collage. I've got an envelope I'm recycling, which was a really beautiful navy. Again, another bit of card I've saved. A bit of wrapping paper that I saved that was too small to wrap anything with. So I want you to take, 15 minutes. Maybe you want to time yourself, put on an alarm or a timer, and just really quickly go through your house, visit your recycling bin. That's a great place to start to find different materials that you can work with. If you're working with plastic, just make sure it's something that it will stick easily to your paper. So something that doesn't weigh too much or isn't too big, because you might find that it just falls off. But little tiny bits of cut up plastics from your recycling bin work great. You can look around your mail. Maybe you get a lot of junk mail and you can recycle some of that into using for your project. Or maybe you're like me and you just save all the little bits you cut and you've got some ready bits to work with. So let's get started. I also have my glue stick, pencil. I grabbed a couple of Sharpies. If you want to bring paint into this, I would suggest getting out your acrylics. But for time's sake and not boring you, I kept 2 Sharpies. And of course, we're going to need scissors. So I already went through this magazine and I didn't film that bit because that'd be a little bit boring. And I found an image that I liked as my starting off point. I liked that it had some scribbles here that almost looked like pencil scratches already. And I liked that it's black and white because it means that all the color that I add to it will be in my layers. So I'm gonna start and just add a bit of glue to this. I'm gonna work it landscape and use these two bits on the side to build on the things that I glue to my collage. And one of the great things about collage is that apart from it staying on your paper, there really isn't any rules. So don't limit yourself to paper. See what else is in there that you can give a second life to just by cutting it up or pasting it into your artwork. Brilliant. So there we go. That is my base. I'm going to bring some of these bits. Ooh, there goes my glue. Useful to always put your cap back on. I've got carpet and it's not the best if glue gets on it. So we've got these little bits. I'm gonna bring out, these are from the label maker and they're like these little stickers in gold bits and I think they'll look really nice in there. Let's get this bit of leather out. Now, I'm going to set these to one side, prepare my little bits, and I'm going to start by looking a bit at the colors I have and the patterns. And so that is the first part of a collage, right? So you've got color and pattern. Then you've got textures and how you use those different textures and how light reflects on those different textures. And then kind of going off of texture, you've got layering. And so how 3D can your collage become through this treatment? So we're going to go through all three. So first, color. So we've got our great black and white print from the newspaper. We've got these really earthy browns from the packing tape paper. Navy from the envelope. This lovely muted green color from the spare card. Really bright reds and again green and yellow here, which I think if you look at those threads in with these colors. I know I'm sorry with a lamp it distorts the colors on the camera a lot, but I think these colors look really nice together. I might take the red out for now because it might be a little bit out of my color scheme. I much prefer the bright orange from the cut up card, so I think I'll use that as my super punchy color instead of the darker red. So let's bring in a few of these pieces. Perfect. So I'm gonna start by basing out some of my bigger pieces, and I quite like the idea of keeping this almost all black and white and then splodging in the color as we come into it. So away we go, some scissors, and I'm not gonna think about it too much. I'm gonna just kind of wiggle and cut different shapes here. If the paper tears a little bit, so be it. So I'm going to start gluing some of these wherever I feel they look good. We've got tiny accents of yellow and purple in this text, and we can either keep that in or decide to cover it later with something else. So don't be too afraid if you're not sure about something with a collage. You can always cover it with something else later. So let's get our glue and start tacking down. Okay, now that I've got a little base of black and white to work with, I'm going to slowly start working in some of my color. So let's play a bit with this. To the bit of plastic, I'm making sure to add quite a lot of glue because it's a lot heavier than some of my other paper. And now I'm going to take this like geometrical wrapping paper and have some fun with it. Maybe cross some of the lines that already exist here. Maybe we want to put this in here. Like that. So again, remembering that your base is something you're starting off with, but you don't even have to keep your base at all. If by the end the collaging takes you somewhere different, oops, and you decide that the initial base that you worked with doesn't work with the rest anymore, cover it. Why not? And just making sure wherever your paper is lifting and you don't want it to lift or flap, making sure you're gluing down that bit properly so it doesn't fall over time. Okay, and now that we're starting to introduce some color and pattern, what about the texture? So we've got a matte, so it's not shiny here on the newspaper. We've got very shiny here on the wrapping paper and semi-shiny, it's hard to see here, on the piece of plastic. And so I'm going to come in and add one more matte texture with my thread. So maybe I grab a yellow to begin with. And this can get a little bit tricky with your glue. So if you're doing stuff like thread or really thin bits, you might want to keep a cloth or a baby wipe or something nearby to clean your hands after. But you kind of run it through the glue and use your finger to keep it in place. And then you very gently start pressing on it. And you kind of have to use both your fingers to anchor it. And not really, like slide them off, your fingers off the paper gently so that the thread stays. And I kind of want this to glue on her neck and then fall off. And as you can see, sometimes as I'm lifting, it's coming off. It's very hard to do thread. It's much easier to do it with some PVA glue if you've got some around. You can even use an old brush to help yourself with the PVA and kind of brush on the fibers as you go. But I really love how thread looks on paper, so I thought I'd show you a little bit. And here we need a bit more. There we go. And what I'm gonna do is grab this little yellow square of card that I had, and I'm gonna use that to secure my end of thread here. I'm gonna use another section of this bit of card to secure it on the shoulder on this end, because I'm not sure about this thread staying on, and I want to make sure it does. There we go, that's looking better. And now we're gonna try and see, I've got another little yellow square. I'm going to try and introduce my first element of 3D into this. And so where my thread is loose here, I'm going to try and glue 2 squares. I'm going to cut one of the cream one, the same size as my yellow. And remember, you can try these techniques with different materials. So I'm doing this with a bit of card, but you could do this with 2 bits of plastic. You could try using really thin strips of paper instead of thread. Wire, if you've got any. So I'm gluing. Without destroying the rest of my collage, let me bring this up to the camera. I'm trying to glue the thread sandwiched in between the 2 bits of paper. And I've got quite a lot of glue on my fingers at the moment, so I might need a bit more glue on the paper here to get that going. There we go. So make sure you put glue on both your little squares, and that's going to bring them together much quicker. The smaller you work, the more gentle and patient and slow you have to be with it. Because every little movement will send it flinging one way or another. So there we go, our first dangly part of our collage. Oh, and it's a bit wet. We don't want it to glue onto anything else. So what else can we do to add 3-dimensionality to this little sketch? Now remember those little bits of card that I told you I keep? I'm gonna go ahead and cut a thin strip of this. And some of you may have done this technique, I don't know, maybe on personalized cards that you've done or some diorama projects. But what you do is you take your piece of card and you start folding it one way, then turn it upside down and you fold it the other. Then you turn it upside down and fold it again. And you turn it upside down and you fold it again so that you get a little accordion of paper. Now I'm gonna take maybe this green card I haven't used yet. And I think I want like a half moon object coming off of here. Okay, so we've got our little cutting. We're gonna grab our little snake, and one end of our little zigzag snake we're gonna glue to the shape we just cut. once that's nice and dry, you're gonna take the other end of your snake and glue it to your paper. And so now we've got a nice floating object on our collage. And what I love about these is actually the shadows they start creating when they're sitting on top of your paper. Now, there is something else that you can use to create this texture as well, and it is, let me layer and fold a piece of newspaper. I'm maybe gonna fold it so that it's a little bit thick but not super thick. And we're gonna take the back side, whichever is least smooth and has the most bits of texture, and we're gonna glue it down onto our paper. Then you maybe want to take a piece of something thicker again and build on top of that. So I'm gonna grab one more of these stickers and place it on here. And I might try a little piece of thread. And I'm not going to worry about this one staying there too much, and I'll show you why. And then I think we'll do our top layer at this point. So I'm going to grab maybe another piece of this thin wrapping paper. So you want something thin to go on the top so that you can see all the different 3D effects of all the different textures and ridges that you've built up. So make sure you cut it way bigger than the piece you're covering so that you can kind of fold it into your little pieces. Glue this super well. You can get it the tiniest bit wet if you want even more texture. And what works great with this is little bits of tissue paper, the kind they use to wrap up gifts so that they won't break. That kind of tissue paper. So start at the center and slowly push out until you find the different levels of texture. And let me see if I can show you there. It's a little bit like if you remember our brass rubbing exercises, you get a hint of what's hidden underneath when the light hits the texture. So there you go. That is my experimental collage. Of course, all of yours will be different because you've got different materials at home, and I can't wait to see what you've found and scavenged to integrate into your creations. See you soon. Bye, Art Stars.